circle back around to something you were talking about, writing bigger checks for founders. One of the number one questions that I get from founders is, how much money do I ask for? So if someone hears that, oh, you started writing, Brinc writes bigger checks now, I don't want a founder running over to eBay and say, hey man, I want a check for, 250K. What is your advice to founders in terms of how to determine how much capital they need and how much capital they should raise?
Well, I was just teaching investing and mentoring at 757 this week, and I have to say, like, I'll push back. I'll use that framing of and more again. So
Mm-hmm.
capital is readily available for great teams. So when you leave this region, if you are competitive, actually not competitive regionally, right? Like actually competitive in the kind of regional or sorry national or global landscape, you'll have plenty of money, right? I was talking to a
Right.
team and they're doing medical tech, no issue. Like as
Yeah.
long as
I mean,
you're
every
real.
deal that I've been part of is so oversubscribed right now that, I mean, there's plenty of money out there. I totally agree with what you're saying.
Right, but then on the other side, like I've been in conversations regularly around here where people are not raising or asking for nearly enough. And that's not like saying, hey, you need a million, you ask for two. It's no, like, they're raising like 100 or 125 or 175. And it's like, okay, by the time you even raise that, you have to re-raise, right? And by the time like people even start working on writing those checks, like it's not worth the paperwork,
Yeah,
right?
a
And the
hundred
time.
thousand
Right.
And
dollars
so
instead of a million.
yeah, and
And
so and so it's not that you can't get on with that, right? But I think potentially the conversation needs to be a little bit more audacious. Like I was talking to a founder yesterday from Richmond by way of Seattle, and he was going to ask his first customer bases for $10,000. And I said, okay, let's think about that, right? And this is a customer that's going to essentially like be their first pilot, right? I said, so do you have a sense of how much that person's time is worth sitting on the other side of the table? Like, and I was just giving an example going, when I used to be a professional speaker, like, you could get paid up to 10 grand for an hour, right? Just to talk. And so I said, when you're thinking about someone having to think about even doing due diligence on you and the legal docs just to get you $10,000, I go, it's just not worth even taking your meeting, right? And they had never been told that. And so I immediately said, like, this needs to be $100,000 starting conversation to be a pilot customer of yours, period, full stop. And it was just like, it was just I think it's that kind of local maximum stuff where the founders that are coming from other places, often you'll see them, they're on the right track, right? When you talk to them, they're raising a million, million and a half, whatever it is. And they're not going to, you don't always need to go to a million right away. Like say it's 500 grand, right? That's still material. Then that gives you enough runway to really experiment, right? Like really try versus you're talking about 100, 200K. Yeah, like maybe you can get away with that. Like in some places we invest like in, Jakarta, Indonesia or something, right? Or like Vietnam for salary costs. But like by the time you raise that capital and start deploying, like you're right back at the starting gate again. Like you're raising all over again, right?
that's
There's not
because
enough time to
100K is
experiment.
a salary type of thing, and
Yeah,
you add one per yeah.
and so that's kind of where I think there's a little bit of that local maximum stuff, which happens in every market, right? Like you kind of hit the ceiling of based on where people around you are working, and you can't. It's hard to hold yourself accountable or dream bigger than that, right? And so I think you see the founders that are coming from other places like Boston or other places to here, they've got it right. And then they're when you look at their decks, you see what they're raising. You're like, yep, this checks out. This makes sense.
And do
But
those
the
people
teams that are,
from those areas, are they raising that money here?
yeah, yeah. Oh no, I don't know if they're raising it here. Sorry, I haven't
So do
followed
you
up on
think that
that.
those
But
so those people that you're talking about, those businesses, do you think that they are lowering the bar because they're just trying to get something, because they know that's the check that they can get, and that's the ballpark that they're in? They're in a minor league ballpark, and they can't get that check in a major league, so they're trying to get some sort of win.
that's an interesting point. I have to look at more because that would be a fair argument, right? If you're building like a mom and pop like non-scalable startup, then raising 500,000 sounds crazy, right? So I think that's a fair point. I can't speak that directly
Yeah.
right now. I
At
have to look at
least
more
from
of the
what
data.
I've seen, Zach, is a lot of people don't have a product and they don't have customers and they don't have
I'm
revenue.
not doubting that, but I just also haven't heard a lot of these checks being written. So maybe the reason that they're going for smaller amounts is because they wanted to get something, and they're just holding on for dear life, and they know they might be able to get
Well,
something out of a smaller
and then,
amount.
and if that's the case, and I think it's an important time also to in that founders conversation of their kind of business is to just be honest and have a dialogue,
Right.
right? Just going, look, this is a non-sustainable path forward. and you're
100%
never
with that,
like
right? Yeah.
like you're never going to meet your goal of really solving this problem at this kind of scale and pace, and you're going to suffer for a very long time. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But otherwise, maybe you just need to like take a step left, let this cruise, and put it on freeze, or kill it and look at it this from a different lens, right? And so I think that conversation may not be happening either. I don't know, but like yeah, I don't know many businesses that you can realistically be raising 25, 75, 100 in the United States. And get super far. Not to say that, that first accelerator check, that's usually our check, right? But the next check is what I'm talking about. The post friends and family, friends, family, fools, right? Accelerators. That next check, I think it needs to be more in that kind of $250,000 to 500 kind of starting on average. Obviously, a little bit more, a little bit less depending. But yeah, I don't think it's all happening from this market. 757 has a good track record in certain verticals like medical. They put a lot of money to work in health. Like tens of millions of dollars. There are a couple of verticals and some deals you can point at, but I would argue in aggregate, by not focusing, that also makes it harder for angels, right? Because I remember, I'll look at a deal, from Virginia Beach, and there's something that makes total sense here. Like I love this one deal from the last cohort, which was, it's like Uber for military bases, because there's like all these reasons Uber and DoorDash can't be on military bases. And I was like, no brainer. I go, total makes sense. Scale as fast as you humanly can, just sell. Like
Chow call, is that what that is?
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah, I was like, that makes so much sense. I hope they're doing well. I haven't talked to the founder in a while, but he seems like a really good guy. And then another one around like the medical space, like that can work here. It's not the most obvious place to start, but there's enough markets, and I kind of like things that are where people aren't looking. Like that's one of my favorite things, is being in a place and keeping your head down and knowing what right? Not having to get loud about it or being obvious. So I think there's some things that make sense. Whereas, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense in this region, right? Like fashion, right? Or being in fintech. Like there are things that just don't make a ton of sense, right? That you're just in the wrong pool, right? And so not to say that you can't come for 20K, but if you were going to structure something more logically and chronological, where like every next check made sense, there was enough angels that got it, there was enough business professionals that understand this space to be good mentors, like that kind of stuff, I think has to start galvanizing for some of the kind of flywheel to start.
Someone who's been directly involved within the startup community for almost a decade, I want to talk to you about a serious pain point: spending a ton of time trying to understand the business landscape in the 757. That's time that should be focused on growing the business. At StartWheel, we're here to help you by compiling all of the news you need to know about in one place. Now there's no need to search multiple websites. Just head to startwheel.org and see for yourself. That's startwheel.org.